I didn't say a word when they laughed. I didn't flinch when the room went quiet and somebody muttered "figures" under their breath. I stayed still, hands folded, jaw tight, eyes forward, like I'd been trained to do since the first day they shaved my head and told me to stand taller than my doubts. Silence was my armor. That's what I told myself back then, because if you talk, they hear you. If you stay quiet, they underestimate you, and underestimation? That's a gift. The night it all started, the air smelled like old beer and cheap cologne, the kind of place where people come to tell war stories louder than the truth. A veterans fundraiser, they called it. Flags on the wall, unit patches pinned to corkboards, a DJ playing country songs that never mention the parts that wake you up at 3 a.m. I wore a black jacket over a plain tee, hair pulled back, boots clean but broken in. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed soldier. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. He was already there when I walked in, the veteran, the one everyone gravitated toward. Big voice, bigger presence, gray in his beard, chest full of medals, stories flowing like whiskey shots. People leaned in when he spoke. People nodded. People believed him. He saw me clock the room and smirked like he already knew my place in it. I took a seat near the back, nursing a soda, watching the ritual unfold. Same old dance. Someone asks where you served, someone interrupts to one-up you, someone else decides your silence means you don't belong. I let it roll, I always do, because I didn't come there to prove anything, or at least that's what I told myself. Then he started talking about women in uniform. It was casual at first, a joke wrapped in nostalgia, something about how things were simpler back in his day. Laughter followed, the uncomfortable kind that tells you nobody wants to be the buzzkill. He leaned back, crossed his arms, and said it louder, like he wanted the whole room to hear. Said women were support, not fighters. Said the real fights were for guys who could handle it. He laughed again. This time, a few people laughed with him. I stayed quiet. I felt that familiar heat crawl up my spine, the one that shows up when someone talks like you're invisible. My pulse kicked, my jaw locked. I counted my breaths like they taught me, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Keep it together. Don't give them the satisfaction. He noticed me then. His eyes slid my way slow and deliberate, like he was sizing up a target. "You military?" he asked. Not unkind, not friendly either, just curious in that predatory way some men get when they think they've got the upper hand. "Yeah," I said. One word, flat, controlled. He grinned. "What'd you do? Paperwork?" A couple heads turned. Someone coughed. I felt every eye in the room drift toward me, waiting for a reaction, waiting for me to snap or shrink. I did neither. "I served," I said. "That's it." He chuckled. "Figures." That word again, figures, like my whole life could be summed up in a shrug. I could have ended it there, could have smiled, excused myself, gone home and buried the anger under 1,000 push-ups and a sleepless night. That's what I'd done before. That's what I was good at, enduring, absorbing, moving on. But something about the way he said it stuck, like a splinter you can't ignore. Maybe it was the way he looked at me, like he already decided who I was. Maybe it was the way the room let it happen. Or maybe it was just that I was tired of carrying my story alone, tired of swallowing the truth so other people could stay comfortable. He launched into another story, louder now, about a fight overseas, about bravery and brotherhood. I listened, really listened, and I heard the holes, the exaggerations, the parts that didn't line up. I didn't call him out, not yet. I just watched how people nodded along, how they ate it up, how easy it was for confidence to pass for courage. My hands clenched under the table. I loosened them. Relax, observe, this isn't your fight. That's what I kept telling myself. But the truth was already shifting, because some fights choose you, whether you want them or not. When the DJ cut the music and someone announced a raffle, the veteran raised his glass and toasted the real heroes. His eyes flicked to me again, just for a second, enough to let me know it was intentional, enough to let me know he was poking the bear. I stayed silent. People think silence is weakness. They think if you don't bark, you don't bite. They don't understand that silence is where you plan, where you remember, where you stack every slight and every doubt and every cheap laugh into something solid, something heavy. I thought about the first time I put on a uniform that didn't quite fit right, about the drill sergeant who told me I'd wash out, about the nights I cried in a bunk where nobody could hear me, about the days I outperformed men who never thought I could, about the scars I don't show, and the names I still carry with me. I thought about the last time I'd been underestimated, and how that ended for the person who made that mistake. The veteran finished his toast. Applause rippled through the room. He sat back down, satisfied, victorious even. He had no idea, because I wasn't there to fight him with words. Words are easy. Words fade. I was there to do what I've always done best: wait, measure, prepare. I stood up, quietly, and headed toward the exit, not running, not storming out, just leaving. A few people noticed. He noticed, too. He raised an eyebrow, like he'd won. Let him think that. Outside, the night air hit my face, cold and sharp, clearing my head. I took a deep breath and looked up at the dark sky. I felt calm, focused, like the moment right before the whistle blows and everything snaps into motion. He thought my silence meant I was done. Truth is, my silence was just the beginning, because when the fight finally started, it wouldn't be loud at first, it wouldn't be messy, it would be precise, and by the time he realized who I really was, it would already be too late.
I didn't go home after that night, not right away. I sat in my truck for a long minute, engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel, letting the quiet settle. That silence felt different now. Heavy, loaded, the kind of quiet that comes right before something breaks. I'd felt it before, right before missions, right before doors got kicked in, right before you step into a situation you already know is gonna change you. People think anger explodes, that it comes out screaming and swinging, but real anger, real controlled anger, it gets cold first, sharp, focused. That's where I was. I drove aimlessly at first, city lights blurring past, replaying his voice in my head. Figures, paperwork, real heroes, every word stacked on top of years of swallowed disrespect. I wasn't mad because he was loud. I was mad because he was wrong and because he wore his past like a shield, using it to punch down. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd already made a decision. I wasn't gonna confront him in a bar. I wasn't gonna argue with drunk applause behind him. That's his arena. I fight better on ground I understand. I slept maybe 3 hours that night. Not because I couldn't, but because my brain wouldn't shut off. Faces from my unit floated in and out of my thoughts. My old team leader who trusted me when others didn't. The medic who stitched my arm without anesthetic because we didn't have time. The quiet moments after chaos when nobody cared if you were male or female, only if you did your job. Morning came fast. I hit the gym before sunrise like always. Same routine, same weights, same sweat-soaked hoodie, but my head was somewhere else. Every rep felt like I was burning something off: doubt, rage. Hesitation. I wasn't training my body that morning, I was reminding myself who I was. After the gym, I checked my phone. A couple missed calls, a text from someone I recognized from the fundraiser. "You left early, you okay?" Another message popped up a few minutes later. "That guy last night was out of line." I stared at the screen for a second, then locked the phone and tossed it on the passenger seat. I didn't need validation, I needed clarity. The veteran's name wasn't hard to find. Guys like him leave a trail. Social media pages full of old photos, dusty uniforms, captions about honor and sacrifice. He ran a local tactical training group, weekend warrior stuff, paid classes. Ego feeding stations. His followers treated him like some untouchable legend. I watched his videos that afternoon, sat at my kitchen table, coffee going cold, laptop open. He talked big. Taught basic drills like they were sacred knowledge. Corrected people with that same smirk I'd seen in the bar, especially women, especially anyone who didn't look like him. The comments section was worse. Praise, worship, the occasional woman chiming in trying to prove she belonged, him responding with condescension wrapped in fake encouragement. "Good effort, you'll get there." Like he was handing out approval instead of instruction. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. this wasn't just about one comment anymore. This was about a pattern, about someone rewriting reality because nobody had ever forced him to face it. I didn't want to embarrass him, not yet. I wanted him to underestimate me the same way he always underestimated women. I wanted him comfortable, so I made a plan. Step 1 was simple: visibility. I followed his page, liked a couple posts. Nothing crazy, just enough to exist on his radar without meaning anything. I signed up for one of his training sessions under my real name. No fake profile, no disguise. If he looked close enough, he'd recognize me, but I knew he wouldn't. Men like him never look that closely. The confirmation email came in a few minutes later. Welcome to the team. I almost laughed. The week leading up to the session felt slow, painfully slow. I still worked, still trained, still lived my life, but everything felt like it was orbiting this one point, like gravity had shifted. At work, someone cracked a joke about girls and guns. I didn't react, I just filed it away. At the grocery store, a guy tried to explain protein intake to me like I'd never lifted a weight in my life. Filed away. It wasn't bitterness, it was awareness. Every small moment reinforced why this mattered. The night before the session, I laid my gear out with care. Old habits die hard, boots cleaned, gloves checked, clothing neutral, no unit patches. No flags, nothing that told my story before I opened my mouth. I wanted him judging me exactly how he judged everyone else, by appearance alone. I barely slept again, not from nerves. From anticipation. The training ground was an open lot on the edge of town. Dirt, concrete barriers, a few rusted-out vehicles. Guys were already there when I arrived, stretching, joking, sizing each other up. A handful of women too, younger, nervous, trying to look confident. He showed up 10 minutes late, of course. Big entrance, sunglasses, tactical vest he didn't need. The chatter quieted when he walked out, same energy as the bar, same gravity. His eyes passed over me without stopping. Good. He launched into his intro, talking about discipline, respect, real-world experience. I listened carefully, not to what he said but how he said it, who he looked at, who he ignored. Who he corrected harshly versus gently. It was all there, the hierarchy, the assumptions. When we started drills, he paired people up. Men with men, women with women. I caught that immediately. I didn't say anything, I followed instructions. I always do until there's a reason not to. During movement drills, I kept my pace controlled, not flashy, efficient, clean. I could feel eyes on me now. Not admiration, curiosity, confusion. I was disrupting his expectations without challenging him outright. He stopped near me during a break, looked me up and down. You got some experience? He asked. A little, I said. He nodded slowly. You military? Here it was again. Yeah, where'd you serve? I met his eyes for the first time since the bar, really met them. There was a flicker of recognition, gone just as fast. Overseas, I said. He smiled, same damn smile. Support role? I didn't correct him. I just said something like that. And in that moment I saw it clearly. He wasn't just underestimating me, he was building his whole approach around that assumption, adjusting drills. Holding back feedback, treating me like a liability instead of an asset, perfect, because the best setups don't feel like traps, they feel like routine. And by the end of that day, as sweat soaked through my clothes and the sun dipped low, I knew one thing for sure: this wasn't going to stay polite for long. The tension was already there, coiled tight. He felt it too, even if he didn't understand it yet. This was only the setup. The second week was when things started tightening. You could feel it in the air, like pressure building before a storm. The easy smiles faded, the casual jokes stopped landing. Everyone was settling into roles, and without anyone saying it out loud, I'd been placed neatly into a box. The quiet woman with some experience but not enough to worry about. That box gave me freedom. Nobody watches closely when they think they already understand you. I showed up early every session, not eager, just ready. I stretched alone, checked my gear, stayed out of conversations. The others talked loud about guns they owned, fights they'd won, the things they'd do differently if they were back overseas. The veteran soaked it all up. He thrived on it, corrected stories. Added details, positioned himself at the center of every circle like gravity itself bent toward him. I kept my eyes forward. The drills got more complex. Movement under stress, team-based scenarios. Decision-making while exhausted. That's where cracks start to show. That's where ego gets exposed. I watched guys rush when they should have waited, hesitate when they should have moved. I watched him bark orders that conflicted with his own lessons, and I watched how people scrambled anyway, desperate for his approval. When it was my turn, I did exactly what was asked, no more. No less. I didn't rush, I didn't freeze, I adapted. That's what real training teaches you: how to adjust when the plan falls apart. He noticed, but only enough to look irritated. Don't overthink it, he snapped once when I took an alternate route around a barrier. Copy, I said. He corrected my stance the next drill, pushing my shoulder harder than necessary. I didn't react. Just reset and continued. His jaw tightened. That was new. Men like him do like when intimidation doesn't land. By week 3, the other participants had started to notice too, not openly. Just small glances, lingering looks. A guy I'd been paired with once muttered, "You're solid," under his breath. I nodded and kept moving. Compliments weren't the goal, control was. The veteran started inserting himself into my drills more often, standing closer, watching harder, testing me without admitting that's what he was doing. He'd add weight to my load, shorten my time, complicate instructions, always with a half smile like he was doing me a favor. "Let's see what you've got," he'd say. I gave him just enough. The thing about real experience is that it teaches you patience. You learn that winning too early can cost you later. You learn how to pace yourself, how to hide your edge until it matters. I'd learned that lesson the hard way years ago when I proved myself too fast and paid for it with isolation. I wasn't making that mistake again. One afternoon, we ran a team scenario that involved clearing a vehicle and securing a perimeter. Chaos drill, noise, confusion. He split the groups unevenly, put more of the stronger guys on one team. Left me on the other with 2 rookies and a woman who looked terrified. "Figure it out," he said, stepping back. The rookies panicked, talked over each other, froze up. I stepped in, not loud, not dramatic, just clear, simple directions, eye contact, breathing steady. The fear shifted, they followed. We moved clean, covered angles, communicated quietly. Finished the scenario without mistakes. The other team didn't. He didn't praise us, didn't debrief properly. He just moved on like it hadn't happened. But I saw the flicker in his eyes. The calculation, something was changing. That night I sat on my couch with ice on my knee, scrolling through old photos I rarely looked at. Me younger, me bruised. Me standing with people who trusted me with their lives. I wasn't trying to relive it, I was grounding myself, remembering that this wasn't about proving I belonged. I already knew that. This was about exposing a lie. The following session he pushed harder. We ran physical endurance drills back to back, no real breaks. He called out times loud enough for everyone to hear. When someone slowed, he mocked them. When someone failed, he laughed it off like motivation. When I finished one circuit faster than expected, he stopped the timer and frowned. "That's not right," he said. "It is," I replied calmly. He reset it, made me do it again. I got the same time. A few people exchanged looks. "You sure you're not holding back on the rest of the drills?" he asked, voice edged with suspicion. "I'm following your instructions," I said. That answer annoyed him more than any argument would have. By then, I could feel the shift in how he treated me. Less dismissive, more confrontational. He wasn't underestimating me anymore, but he wasn't ready to respect me either. That middle ground is dangerous. That's where people start making mistakes. During a water break, he finally cornered me. "You don't talk much," he said. "Don't need to. You think you're better than the rest." "No," he studied my face, trying to read something. "You got something to prove?" I looked at him then, really looked. The lines around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way his confidence felt practiced, not natural. "No," I said again. "Do you?" That was the moment. He laughed, but it was sharp, defensive. "Careful," he said. "This isn't the military. You don't know who you're talking to." "I do," I replied. Silence stretched between us, heavy, charged. People nearby pretended not to listen, which meant they were listening to every word. He stepped back first. From that point on, it wasn't subtle anymore. He corrected me publicly. Questioned my decisions. Paired me with bigger, more aggressive guys during contact drills, the kind who didn't know their own strength and liked proving it. I took hits, controlled the damage. Adjusted, I never complained, but I started documenting everything. Times, changes in rules, comments, not emotionally, factually, because patterns matter. The final build came during a full-day scenario, advertised as the real test. He hyped it hard, told everyone this would separate the talkers from the doers. I arrived knowing he was going to try something. I just didn't know what yet. He split teams again, gave vague instructions, changed objectives mid-run, created confusion on purpose. When people failed, he blamed them. When they adapted, he claimed that was his intention all along. When I adapted faster than he expected, he snapped. "That's not how I taught it," he said loudly. "You didn't teach it," I said, calm but clear. "You said adapt." The room went still. For a second, I thought he might explode right there. His face flushed, his jaw clenched. He stepped close enough that I could smell his breath. "You questioning my authority?" he asked. I didn't raise my voice, didn't step back. "I'm following your scenario." People were watching now. "Really watching?" He smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. "Good," he said. "Then let's see how you handle pressure." That's when I knew the build was complete. He wasn't trying to train me anymore. He was trying to break me, and the thing about pressure, it doesn't destroy the prepared, it reveals them. Pressure changed everything. You could feel it the moment I stepped back onto the training ground that morning. The air was heavier, not from heat but from anticipation. People weren't joking as much anymore. Conversations cut short when I walked by. Nobody said my name, but everyone knew there was something brewing, like a fault line cracking under the surface. He was already there, pacing. Clipboard in hand, jaw tight. He didn't look at me when I arrived, and that told me more than any words ever could. Ignoring someone takes effort when they're living rent-free in your head. The drills started fast. No warm-up, no easing in, straight into chaos. He barked orders rapid fire, changing them mid-sentence, watching who stumbled. A couple people did. One guy froze and took heat for it. Another snapped back and got benched. Fear was creeping in now, and fear makes people sloppy. He put me on point for a team movement drill. No explanation. No context, just go. I took half a second to scan, adjust, and move. My team followed. We flowed through the obstacles, clean, efficient, quiet. When we finished, there was a pause. The kind that hangs just a little too long. That's not what I said, he snapped. You said move, I replied. I said move left. You changed it after we started. Murmurs rippled through the group. Nothing loud but enough. He stepped closer. You calling me a liar? No, I said evenly. I'm calling it unclear. That word hit him harder than an insult ever could. His voice rose. You think you know better than me. I think clarity matters. The silence afterward was sharp enough to cut skin. He stared at me like he was trying to decide whether to crush me or control himself. Finally, he turned away, waving his hand dismissively. Reset, he barked. Again, faster. That's when the line was crossed, not because he raised his voice, not because he challenged me, but because from that moment on, everything he did was aimed directly at me. He changed pairings, gave me less time, more weight, harder routes. He corrected me mid-drill in ways that broke flow instead of improving it. He contradicted himself just to see if I'd hesitate. I didn't. The others noticed. You can't hide targeted pressure in a group that trains together. People started avoiding eye contact with him when I was involved. Nobody wanted to be next. Nobody wanted to get pulled into it. During a contact drill, he paired me with a guy twice my size, former linebacker type. Aggressive, eager to impress. He leaned in too hard, too fast, throwing weight instead of technique. I absorbed it, redirected, took him off balance clean. He hit the ground harder than he expected. Watch it, the guy snapped, embarrassed. Control yourself, I said calmly. The veteran stormed over. You don't get to coach, he said. I'm preventing injury. You don't decide that. I looked at him. Neither does ego. That was a mistake, or maybe it was. Either way, the temperature spiked. He pulled me aside in front of everyone. You're pushing boundaries. I'm following the training. No, he said, voice low and dangerous. You're challenging me, I shrugged slightly. If that's how you see it, his eyes narrowed, you want to test yourself so bad, fine. You'll get your chance. From that moment, the session stopped being training and started feeling like a proving ground designed to humiliate. He set up a scenario no one else ran. Solo, time limited. Complex, too complex for what it was supposed to teach. He framed it like an opportunity. Let's see what she's really got, he said to the group. I stepped forward without hesitation. The scenario was a mess by design, conflicting objectives, limited intel, physical obstacles stacked back to back. He wanted me overwhelmed, wanted me rushed. Wanted me to fail in front of everyone so he could reclaim control. I didn't rush, I prioritized, cut unnecessary movement, adjusted on the fly. When an obstacle collapsed under my weight, I rerouted instead of forcing it. When time ran tight, I sacrificed speed for certainty. I finished bruised, breath burning, but upright. The timer beeped. He stared at it like it offended him. That took too long, he said. It met the objective. You hesitated. I evaluated. You froze. I adapted. The crowd was dead silent now. Nobody was pretending anymore. They were watching something bigger than drills unfold. He leaned in close, teeth clenched. You're not special. I met his gaze. Never said I was. You think being quiet makes you tough? No, I said softly. Surviving does. That word, surviving, hit something deep. I saw it in his face, a flicker, something personal. Something unresolved. And that's when I knew the conflict wasn't just professional anymore. It was personal for him too. He dismissed the group early that day. No debrief, no wrap-up. Just a sharp, we're done. People left in clusters, whispering, stealing glances back at us. A couple of them nodded at me on the way out. Respect, not loud, but real. I stayed behind, packing my gear slowly. He lingered too, pretending to check equipment. Waiting, you think you embarrassed me, he said finally. I wasn't trying to, he laughed humorlessly. That's worse, then maybe ask yourself why. He turned on me, you don't get to psychoanalyze me. I'm not, I said, I'm responding. To what? To pressure, he scoffed. Pressure breaks people, only if they're pretending. That was it. His control slipped completely for just a second. His face hardened, eyes cold. You don't know who you're messing with, he said. I zipped my bag and slung it over my shoulder. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. I walked past him, heart steady, pulse calm. Outside, the sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the lot. I paused for a moment, breathing in the air, letting the tension settle into something solid. The rising conflict wasn't loud anymore. It didn't need to be. It was locked in now like a drawn blade waiting for motion. This wasn't about skill, it wasn't even about respect, it was about control. And control was slipping through his fingers. Pressure doesn't show up all at once, it creeps in, settles into the cracks, starts changing how people move, how they talk, how they think. By the time most folks notice it, they're already bent under it. That week, pressure wasn't just part of the training anymore, it was the training. And it wasn't evenly distributed, it was aimed. I felt it the moment I woke up on training day. Not nerves, not fear, something sharper, like the calm you get when you know a storm is coming and there's nowhere to hide. I welcomed it. I'd lived inside worse storms than this. The group was smaller when I arrived, a few people had dropped out. Scheduling conflicts, they said, but I knew better. Not everyone wants to train when ego stops being protected, when favoritism becomes obvious, when standing too close to a fault line means you might fall in. He was already in full command mode. Voice loud, movements sharp. He barely acknowledged anyone unless it was to correct them. When he saw me, he paused for half a second, just long enough. "Today's different," he announced. "No hand-holding, no adjustments, you perform or you fail." His eyes locked on mine when he said fail. The drills were brutal, physically and mentally. He stacked them without recovery time. Changed rules mid-run and blamed participants for not keeping up. People were exhausted within the first hour. Mistakes multiplied. Frustration leaked out in sharp breaths and muttered curses. Every time someone slipped, he looked at me. When it was my turn, he did something new. He isolated me. "Solo lane," he said, "no team, no backup." The lane was longer than the others. Heavier obstacles, fewer instructions, designed to overwhelm. I nodded and stepped in. Halfway through, my legs burned. My grip started to slip. Sweat blurred my vision. But my breathing stayed controlled. That's the thing people don't understand. Breakdown doesn't start in the body, it starts in the mind. And mine wasn't giving up. When I finished, he didn't stop the timer right away. Let it run an extra few seconds. Subtle but not subtle enough. "Slow," he said. I wiped sweat from my face. "Timer was late," he smiled thinly. "Excuses already." The word hung there. Excuses, like he'd been waiting to use it. The others shifted uncomfortably. One guy opened his mouth like he might say something, then thought better of it. Silence won again. That's when he escalated. During a contact drill, he pushed people harder than necessary, ignored safety calls, let aggression run unchecked. When someone got clipped too hard, he waved it off. "Real world's worse." Then he paired me again with the same aggressive guy from before. "Full pressure," he said. "No mercy." The guy looked at me uncertain. I met his eyes. "Control," I said quietly. He nodded, but when the drill started, adrenaline took over. He came in wild. I absorbed the first hit, redirected the second, but the third caught me off angle. Pain flared across my ribs, sharp, immediate. "Keep going," the veteran shouted. I adjusted, changed levels. Used leverage instead of force. Took the guy down clean, pinning him without impact. Controlled, safe. "Time," someone yelled. I stood up slowly, breath tight. The guy on the ground looked surprised. Not angry, just surprised. The veteran stormed over. "You trying to make him look weak?" he barked. I kept it safe. "You embarrassed him." I finished the drill. His face was red now. The mask slipping. "You think you're untouchable?" "No," I said. "I think you're pushing too hard." That did it. He laughed loud and sharp. "You hear that?" he called to the group. "She thinks she knows better." I felt the room shift. People were tired, hurt, fed up. This wasn't inspiring anymore, it was abusive. "You got a problem?" he continued. "You can leave." I didn't move. "I said leave," he repeated. I took a breath, slow, controlled. "I paid to train," I said, "not to be targeted." A few heads snapped up. That word targeted cut through the fog. His smile vanished. "You accusing me of something?" "I'm stating an observation." He stepped closer, invading my space. "You want to make this personal?" "You already did." For a moment, I thought he might put his hands on me, his fists clenched, jaw working. The room held its breath, then he backed off. "Fine," he said. "Final drill, end of day." He set it up like a punishment. Extended time, no breaks, high complexity, the kind of thing that breaks people mentally even if their bodies hold. People started failing. One by one, a guy quit halfway through, dropping to his knees, gasping. Another froze, completely overwhelmed. He berated them both. When it was my turn again, I stepped forward, ribs screaming, muscles shaking. He leaned in close. "This is where people show who they really are," he said. "I already know who I am," I replied. The drill was hell. My body wanted to stop. My mind didn't. I broke it down piece by piece, task by task. When something went wrong, I adjusted instead of panicking. When fatigue blurred my thinking, I slowed my breathing. I'd been here before, worse than this. When I finished, I dropped to one knee, chest heaving. Pain pulsed through my side. I stayed there, grounding myself, refusing to let him see anything but control. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the outcome. "That's it," he said finally. "You're done." I stood slowly. "Am I?" "Yes," he snapped. "You don't fit here." The words landed heavy, but not on me, on him, on the room. Maybe, I said calmly, this isn't about fit, he scoffed. Oh yeah. What's it about then? About you losing control, I said, and needing someone to blame. Silence exploded around us, no whispers now, just raw awareness. He pointed toward the exit. Get out, I picked up my gear, every movement deliberate. My ribs hurt, my body was exhausted, but my mind was crystal clear. As I walked past him, I stopped just for a second. You had your chance to be a leader, I said quietly. You chose pressure instead. I walked away. Behind me, something broke, not loud, not dramatic. Just the sound of authority collapsing under its own weight. The pressure had done its job, and the breakdown had begun. I didn't expect the call, that's the truth. When I walked away from that training ground, ribs aching, hands shaking just enough to remind me I was human, I thought the story would end the way most of them do, quietly. A bad experience. A lesson learned, another name added to the long list of people I'd outgrown. I figured he'd spin his version, I'd move on, and life would keep rolling. But pressure doesn't just break people. Sometimes it exposes things they've been hiding for years. 3 days after that final session, my phone buzzed while I was making coffee. Unknown number, I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. This is Rachel, the voice said when I answered. Calm, professional. I'm calling regarding the training group you attended last month. My stomach tightened. She wasn't law enforcement. She wasn't media. She introduced herself as part of an independent oversight committee connected to a veterans support organization. Complaints had been filed, multiple, recent, some old. All pointing in the same direction. And your name came up, she said, not as the problem, as the pattern. She explained that several participants had reported unsafe training practices, verbal harassment, and targeted behavior, especially toward women. Most had stayed anonymous. Fear, embarrassment. Loyalty to the image, the usual reasons. But what happened during your sessions, she continued, seems to have accelerated things. I leaned against the counter, coffee forgotten. Accelerated how? He lost control, she said plainly, in front of witnesses. That was the twist. Not that he'd been reported, but that my silence, my restraint, my refusal to explode had forced him to reveal himself. She asked if I'd be willing to talk, not testify, not confront, just explain. Share my experience. Facts only, I said yes. We met in a small office a week later, neutral space. No flags, no photos of glory on the walls. Just a table, a recorder, and 2 women who listened without interrupting. I told them everything. The escalation, the targeting, the safety issues. I showed them my notes, dates, times, quotes. Patterns, they nodded, took notes, asked clarifying questions. At the end, one of them said something I didn't expect. You're not the first woman to describe this, she said. You're just the first who didn't back down. That hit harder than any drill ever could. The investigation moved fast, faster than I thought possible. Turns out when you strip away the hero narrative, what's left matters. His certifications were reviewed, his training methods scrutinized. His past complaints resurfaced, ones that had been buried, dismissed, minimized, and then the story shifted again. I started getting messages, private ones, from women, from men too. People who'd trained with him years ago, people who'd felt small, unsafe, humiliated. They didn't all say the same things, but the themes were identical. I thought it was just me. I didn't want to be labeled difficult. I figured that's just how it is. One message stood out. A woman who'd left the group after a single session wrote, I saw what he was doing to you. It looked like you were standing up to him without saying a word. That gave me courage to speak. That's when I realized this had never been about me winning a fight. It was about forcing the truth into the open. He didn't go quietly. Of course he didn't. He posted videos, long ones, defensive ones. Talking about cancel culture and soft people who can't handle real training. He never said my name, but he didn't have to. His followers knew. They flooded his comments with support. Some with hate, a few found their way into my inbox. I didn't respond. Silence had worked once. I let it work again, then the official notice dropped. His training program was suspended pending review. His affiliations quietly removed from websites. The organization that hosted his sessions cut ties. No dramatic announcement, no public shaming. Just consequences. That was the real twist. Not a public showdown, not a viral clip, not a screaming match, just accountability. I ran into him one last time, weeks later, at a different gym across town. Pure coincidence. He looked smaller somehow, less certain. His eyes met mine across the floor. For a second, I thought he might say something. He didn't. He looked away. And in that moment, I understood something important. Revenge doesn't always look like domination. Sometimes it looks like watching someone lose the power they abused. I didn't smile, didn't gloat. I finished my workout and left. Outside, the air felt lighter. I sat in my car and thought about that first night. The bar, the laughter, the word figures. I thought about how easy it would have been to snap, to shout, to prove myself on his terms. But that wouldn't have changed anything. Silence did, control did, consistency did. The twist wasn't that I beat him, the twist was that I never fought him the way he expected. And that's what unraveled him. People think revenge is loud, explosive, immediate. They imagine fists shouting a final blow that settles everything in one dramatic moment. That's the version movies sell. That's the version men like him believe in. And that's exactly why they never see the real kind coming. I didn't feel triumphant after the investigation started. I didn't feel satisfied when his program got suspended. What I felt was unfinished. Not angry, not hungry for payback, just aware that systems don't change just because one man falls. They change when the truth gets anchored somewhere solid. That's when I decided I wasn't done yet. The oversight committee asked if I'd be willing to help in a different way, not publicly. Not as a spokesperson, but as a consultant. Someone who could quietly help them redesign how they evaluated training programs, especially those run by veterans transitioning into civilian instruction roles. I said yes. Not because I wanted to stay connected to him, but because I wanted to make sure someone like him didn't get to hide again. We met weekly, long, detailed conversations. I broke down what real training looks like versus ego-driven performance, how authority should stabilize a group, not dominate it, how pressure is supposed to sharpen decision-making, not crush it. I explained the difference between discipline and humiliation, something too many people confuse. They listened, adjusted frameworks, added safeguards, required transparency, feedback loops. Anonymous reporting that actually went somewhere. Slow work, unsexy work, real work. At the same time, word started spreading, quietly, the same way his reputation had once grown. People asked me questions, not online, in gyms, in parking lots, in private messages. Can I ask you something off the record? Those were the words that came before every story. A former participant admitted he'd stayed silent because the veteran had helped him once. Another said he thought abuse was just part of earning respect. A woman told me she'd stopped training altogether after being mocked during a drill, convinced she didn't belong anywhere tactical. I didn't tell them what to do, I just listened. And listening. That's how you build something dangerous to the wrong kind of power. Meanwhile, he was spiraling. I didn't follow his accounts anymore, but people sent screenshots, posts getting angrier. More defensive, less polished. He framed himself as a victim, claimed betrayal, said the world didn't respect warriors anymore, but something else was happening too. People stopped showing up. His circle shrank. The echo chamber got smaller and louder at the same time. That's how you know influence is dying. It starts feeding only on itself. One afternoon, I got an email from the oversight group. He's requesting a review hearing. I read it twice. This was his attempt to reclaim ground, to reframe the narrative. To argue that he'd been misunderstood, targeted, unfairly treated. He wanted reinstatement, validation, control, and here's the thing, he could have gotten it if no one pushed back. They asked if I'd attend, not to argue, not to accuse, to observe. I agreed. The hearing was held in a neutral conference space. Long table, fluorescent lights, water pitchers untouched. He sat on one side with a representative, shoulders squared, chin lifted, the same posture he wore like armor. When he saw me enter, his eyes flicked up sharp, startled, then hardened. I took a seat quietly. No uniform, no insignia, just myself. He talked first. He framed everything as misunderstanding. Claimed intensity had been mistaken for hostility. Said some people couldn't handle high standards. He never said my name, but he didn't have to. He spoke in generalities, the way people do when they want to avoid responsibility. Then they asked questions about safety protocols, about inconsistencies, about why drills changed mid-run without explanation, about documented comments. That's when the cracks showed. He contradicted himself, minimized concerns, got defensive, his voice sharpened. The calm leader persona slipped. They turned to me. Would you like to add anything? One of them asked. This was the moment he'd been expecting. The confrontation, the accusation, the emotional appeal. I didn't give him that. I'm not here to attack him, I said. I'm here to talk about impact. I described what it felt like to train under shifting rules, what targeted pressure does to group morale, how leadership built on fear collapses when stress peaks. I spoke plainly, clinically, without emotion. He interrupted twice. They stopped him both times. That was the revenge setup, not humiliating him, not exposing him emotionally. Just placing him in a room where his usual tactics didn't work and watching him unravel under his own behavior. At the end of the hearing, they asked him to step outside. He looked at me then. Really looked, not with anger, with something closer to disbelief, like he'd finally realized this was never a fight he could win by force. He didn't get reinstated. Instead, he was required to complete corrective leadership training if he ever wanted to return. Oversight, supervision, accountability, the things he hated most. I walked out of that building feeling lighter than I had in years, not because I'd beaten him, but because I'd helped shut a door behind him and opened one ahead. A few weeks later, the committee launched a new initiative: safe training standards, mentorship for women entering tactical spaces, anonymous reporting with real follow-through. They asked me to help design it. I said yes. That was the real revenge, not destruction, replacement, building something better where his shadow used to be. Because the strongest response to abuse of power isn't taking power away, it's proving it was never theirs to begin with. The confrontation didn't come the way people imagine. No raised voices in a parking lot, no dramatic showdown with witnesses holding their breath. It came quiet, controlled, and unavoidable, like gravity pulling everything back to center. I got the message on a Tuesday afternoon. We need to talk, in person, no greeting, no explanation, just his name at the bottom. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me knew this was the moment everything had been circling around. Avoidance would only stretch the tension. And I wasn't afraid of him anymore, not in the way he understood fear. I replied with one line: public place, coffee shop. Noon. He agreed within minutes. That told me everything. The coffee shop was busy enough to feel safe, quiet enough to talk. Neutral ground, no stage, no audience he could command. I got there early, chose a seat near the window, back straight, hands relaxed. I ordered black coffee and waited. When he walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. The confidence was gone. Not completely, but cracked. His shoulders were tight. His eyes scanned the room before landing on me. He hesitated, then approached. He didn't sit right away. "You look fine," he said, like it surprised him. "I am," I replied. He sat, hands clasped, jaw working, silence stretched. This time he didn't control it. "They told me you were involved," he said finally. "I was asked to help," I said. "Help," he repeated, bitter. "You call this help? I call it accountability," he scoffed. "You ruined my career." I met his gaze, calm. "No, your behavior did." His eyes flashed. "You think you're better than me?" "No," I said. "I think I'm responsible for myself." That seemed to disarm him more than any insult could have. He leaned back, exhaled hard. "You never said what you really did, back then, in the bar, in training." "You hid it." "I didn't hide," I said. "You never asked." "That's bullshit." "Is it?" I asked. "Or did you just assume?" His mouth opened, then closed. He looked away, staring out the window like the answer might be written in the glass. "You wanted to prove a point," he said. "Yes," I replied, "just not the one you think." He shook his head. "All these years, everything I've done, and it comes down because of you." "It comes down," I said carefully, "because you couldn't stand not being in control." That word again, control. He laughed softly, not mocking this time. "Tired? You think you know me?" "I think I know the pattern," I said, "and I know the damage it causes." His hands trembled slightly. He noticed and clenched them into fists. "They don't understand what it takes," he said. "Out there, pressure, fear, weakness gets people killed." "I know," I said. He looked up sharply. "Do you?" "Yes," I said. "I've lived it." That was the first time I saw doubt cross his face, real doubt. "You never said." "I didn't need to," I interrupted gently. "You decided who I was before I opened my mouth." Silence settled again, different this time, not tense, heavy with realization. "They're making me take courses," he said quietly. "Like I'm some kid who doesn't know anything." "Leadership isn't about knowing everything," I said. "It's about being willing to learn." He rubbed his face with both hands. For a moment, the legend, the veteran, the authority figure disappeared. What was left was just a man who'd been praised for so long he'd forgotten how to listen. "You could have exposed me publicly," he said. "You didn't." "I didn't want revenge like that," I said. "Then why do all this?" I leaned forward slightly. "Because people were getting hurt. Because silence protects the wrong things." He nodded slowly. "And now," I said, "you decide what kind of man you want to be when no one's clapping." He let out a long breath. "I don't know if I can fix this." "That's honest," I said. "It's a start." We sat there for a few more minutes, neither of us speaking. The coffee cooled. Life moved around us, cups clinking, people laughing, normal moments continuing uninterrupted. Finally, he stood. "I didn't expect you to be like this," he said. "Neither did you," I replied. He hesitated. "You didn't stay silent after all." I met his eyes. "I stayed silent until it mattered." He nodded once, no apology, no closure, just acknowledgement, and that was enough. As he walked out, I didn't feel victory. I felt release. The confrontation wasn't about defeating him, it was about ending the hold his shadow had over the space. When the door closed behind him, I took a sip of my coffee and let myself breathe. The fight was over, not because someone lost, but because the truth had finally been spoken, calmly, clearly, and without fear. I didn't walk out of that coffee shop feeling like a hero. There was no rush, no spike of adrenaline, no moment where the world suddenly made sense. What I felt was quieter than that, heavier in a different way. Like setting down a pack you didn't realize you'd been carrying for years. People ask how it ended. They expect a headline, a winner, a loser. That's how we're trained to see conflict. Someone dominates, someone folds, but real endings don't work like that. Real endings teach you something whether you want the lesson or not. I drove home slow that day, windows cracked, letting the air move through the car. The city looked the same, traffic lights, storefronts, people going about their lives. And that's when it hit me, nothing outside had changed. Everything inside had. I thought back to that first night, the bar, the laughter, the word figures. How small the moment seemed at the time and how powerful it became later. That's the thing about disrespect, it rarely announces itself as a threat. It shows up as jokes, assumptions, shrugs. And if you don't challenge it, it grows roots. But challenging it doesn't always mean swinging back. Sometimes it means standing still long enough for the truth to catch up. I went back to my normal routine. Work, training, quiet mornings, nothing flashy, but people started treating me differently, not with fear, with awareness. Like they understood something had shifted, even if they didn't know the details. The Oversight Initiative launched officially a month later. New standards, new language, new expectations. I stayed behind the scenes, exactly where I wanted to be. I didn't need my name attached to it. Impact mattered more than recognition. Every once in a while, I'd get a message from someone new. I spoke up because of you, I stayed when I would have quit. I realized I wasn't weak, I was being tested the wrong way. Those messages reminded me why silence isn't the same as surrender. Silence can be strategy, silence can be strength, silence can be the space where you decide who you're going to be when the noise stops. I never saw him again after that day. I heard things through the grapevine. He completed the courses, struggled, clashed, but stayed. Whether that meant growth or stubbornness, I'll never know, and honestly, I didn't need to. My story wasn't about fixing him, it was about refusing to become smaller so someone else could feel bigger. That's the moral people miss when they talk about fights like this. It's not about female versus male, soldier versus veteran, new blood versus old guard. It's about power, how it's used, and who's allowed to question it. Real strength doesn't demand obedience. It earns trust. Real leadership doesn't crush dissent, it absorbs it and adapts. And real revenge. Real revenge is walking away without bitterness because you know you didn't lose yourself in the process. I stayed silent until the fight began, not because I was afraid to speak, but because I was waiting for the right moment, when my voice wouldn't just make noise but make change. And when that moment came, I didn't raise my voice. I raised the standard. That's how it ended. Not with a shout, with a line drawn, and the quiet confidence to never cross it again.